Welcome to The Bone, the podcast that goes deeper. Here we cut through the noise and get straight to the core of the issues that matter. From real stories to raw truths, we dive deep into the conversations that shape our world and challenge our thinking. We're not afraid to dig in and get to the marrow of it all. Whether it's life, culture, or business in sports medicine, we're here to break it down raw and real. No filters, no fluff, just to the bone. With your host, Shelby Daly, we're getting to the bone. This is a clinically pressed, approved CEU podcast. Find the quiz to gain credit at clinicallypressed.org/courses. Clinically Pressed Company, making the complicated simple through results that give back. Find out more at clinicallypressed.org. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Bone. Today we have Albert Torres. He's coming in from California, and he's currently working with the LAFC Academy as the head athletic trainer. Today we're just kind of talking shop and nothing super specific, so buckle up for the wild ride of the different things we're going to cover. So welcome to the show, Albert.
Hey, Shelby, thanks for having me. I'm pretty sure that's how most of our conversation happens. We go through so many different topics in like an hour.
Yeah, so we met in California. I don't know if we've actually fully worked together, but we always intersect in the different circles we're in. So that's one of the cool things about California is you work a variety of jobs and you meet a variety of people and they connect you with different people along the way.
Yeah, I think it started off with jiu-jitsu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you were working an event and I was there as a student intern, just volunteering my time, just getting more of my feet wet with the jiu-jitsu world and realizing that this is pretty cool because this is a type of exposure that you don't really see in other clinical settings. So
yeah,
we just kind of stuck around and stayed connected the whole time.
Yeah, well, the soccer world's so small, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's where, we kind of were trying to figure out what to talk about on the show, but I think that's kind of a great way to start is I'm not sure if students are getting a full spectrum of hands-on care or enough repetitions. I was a big advocate for students getting involved with the jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff because it's high reps, very quick decision-making, just getting your hands dirty ultimately. I think football is usually the next thing that people think they're going to get the most repetitions just because it's such a big team or roster and you're going to see something come through. But it seems like a lot of programs or even just the students aren't really putting themselves out there for networking opportunities, which I always felt was great at jiu-jitsu because we had great staff, but it wasn't always the same. And everybody always had their own opportunities to network and provide to students or even other athletic trainers that were working the events. But I don't know. What's your hot take on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think we are in a situation where I would say there's some things going on in athletic training programs where it's limiting students from their time being out on the field for positive reasons. But at the same time, there's also some consequences to that decision. I know when I was with my program, we had a limit of, 30 hours a week in what we can do in a clinical setting. And that was obviously to protect the students from being overworked. As you can see in athletic training, that's what we're known for. But at the same time, it does limit our exposures. And so when I got to volunteer my time at jiu-jitsu, I got to see a lot of emergency injuries that we typically don't see in clinical settings. And as a student, you're just there to support, not necessarily like to get truly involved, because in jiu-jitsu, it's you and the ATC, right, as a student. At the same time, there's situations where you're just talking on the mat, talking about experiences, talking about how you would do this. So you're picking a lot of that ATC's brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying ATC just because they're certified and your students to just kind of make that distinction. So that's the type of stuff that I think athletic training students are missing, is that clinical piece, especially now when you're in the trenches and you're getting into dirty stuff. We're talking about like just injury exposures to even administrative experiences. Like you, as an athletic trainer, when you get involved and you're in charge of your own clinical setting, let's say you're a high school athletic trainer, how do you have these conversations with administrators, coaches, and other people who need to be a part of that clinical decision making? I think as a student, you're sometimes hindered from that conversation because the ATC wants to manage that conversation because that's ultimately it is their clinical setting and it is their daytime job.
Yeah. Well, I had Jenkins on, and we were talking about preceptorship and just even the quality of hours that the students are getting. I don't know, I'm not sure when an injury is going to happen, so it's kind of a wide net sometimes of, well, I kind of just need you here so you understand that an injury can happen at any time. I mean, when I was at Caltech, we had kids or students that were getting injured in their dorm room, like their light fixture fell on their head and they got a concussion. So it was just quite a variety ultimately being on a college campus. Obviously, non-scholastic athletics, there are different things that come up that might not be directly on campus, but being ready for a phone call of maybe the injury exacerbated overnight and you're ready to refer them to the urgent care where their house is. I know I had done some time at LAFC and those kids came from like an hour or two away to come to practice for the academy. So it's making sure that you have a plan for anything that can happen and understand where all your athletes are coming from and having networks in those places too. So I think the quality time question is very hard for me to answer because there are also coaches jumping into your office to have conversations about athletes or next season. That's where I didn't feel like when I was in my education that administrative was taking notes. I was never on like the department meetings or going with the athletic trainer to the athletic director's office to talk about the next season. I may have reported to coaches because I was responsible for athletes, but I don't think those are very structured ultimately and planned out. How do you respond on the fly ultimately? Maybe on the sideline is what they meant, but I mean, what happens if you don't have an angry coach and you never experienced that during a season and how to react? So some of those soft skills, I think, are what I'm wondering, or when are the students going to get those experiences?
Yeah, and that's kind of in the place where I'm at now. It's I deal with a lot more administrative duties, and a lot of that is communication with parents, communication with athletes, communication with admin coaches, right? You're dealing with a lot of personalities, and you have to be able to adapt to that. Being as an athletic trainer, you're at the center of all these stakeholder webs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to talk to people. You have to be comfortable talking to people. You have to be comfortable being criticized. You have to be comfortable getting praised. Like one day you're getting praised. When it can be an hour in, you can getting praise, and then 30 minutes you're getting a call from an angry coach that they just saw an injury report that the athlete's out for the day. And they were a key player. So you have to learn how to manage the situation, and then also be emotionally intelligent in how you go about these situations. Because at the end of the day, you have to have that response. You have that personal professional relationship with the staff in order to maintain and keep going.
Yeah. Well, and you're at the professional level technically with the academy. I mean, it's elite athletes that you're working with. And I don't know if anybody's actually done a study to see how many athletic training students go into a program thinking they're going to come out working with a professional team. I think that would be an interesting statistic just to have, because that's basically what my goal was going into the athletic training was I want to work with elite athletes, performance driven, professional side, payment, passing hands kind of thing. Money's on the line. I thought that was awesome, and it gave you an extra edge if you were really helping the athletes perform better. With that, I don't think that a lot of athletic trainers are getting the experience of what, I don't know. At the Division I level, I guess you kind of get it too, but just how much is on your shoulders of developing a program, a cohesive program. When I was with the academy in Philadelphia, when I came in as the head athletic trainer, it was somebody should be able to kind of insert themselves and kind of understand what the processes and systems were. And I'm very logical on those. If somebody can't come in and fully understand, okay, so performance testing, this follows from academy second team to the first team. because we are trying to mirror it so that those academy players understand the movements and they actually are building the foundations to be able to perform at the first level testing. When I started asking questions about that and why it was so segmented and kind of half-assed at the academy level, even though it was the end of season testing that I was coming into, a lot of people got very questioning of me and what I was trying to do. They took it very personally that I was asking questions on the logic behind the testing. And I don't think at the collegiate level, because you have one team and not a tiered system, I think you don't get some of those interconnections of how the segmentation of the programming is supposed to work, which I thought was very interesting. I don't know if you've had any experience with that, but I think that's one thing in the athletic training programming that we're lacking is the performance side, the strength and conditioning. I didn't learn the different sets, reps, what you're trying to achieve with, high weight, low rep, or, opposite. And I thought that was very interesting when I went and got my CSCS, that I think that segues into rehabilitation very easily, and we're not hitting those marks. So I'm just spitballing right now of my experiences. So
No, that's perfect. It's just because, I think for me, I come from a performance background. I come from a coaching background before I became a certified athletic trainer. I coached high school soccer for about 6 years, 7 years. I worked as a goalkeeper coach.
Mhm.
I was also in the weight room developing strength conditioning plans for all the athletes, especially as a head soccer coach. I was also in charge of that. For me, I've always been in a situation where I've had to develop systems and procedures, basically build a foundation to make sure that the program can thrive in a successful way. So I've had that experience, and so getting to the athletic training program for me, that wasn't the issue, but I can see how that's an issue for other people who go into their clinical setting, right? So with that, going into the academy, when I came into the academy, I started off as a contractor. So so LA's never had an academy athletic trainer, and then when they finally did, it was one full time and one part time, and I came in as a part time. Now, obviously, dealing with 6, 7 teams, that's pretty tough to manage on your own. But the guy before me, he did a really good job as far as managing all the situations that he could. But there were still some things that were lacking, right, that would allow us to thrive and mirror what the first team was doing, the second team was doing. So when I came in as a head athletic trainer, they added on another full time. So now it's 2.5 of us, and hopefully we get to a little bit more. So it is growing. So from that aspect, it definitely lightens up the load on how to manage all these athletes, how to make sure all your procedures are going. But at the same time, now that grows the responsibility of, okay, now we got the staffing that's coming. All right, let's now make sure that we get all the academy stuff aligned with the first team stuff, so that way we have a full functioning machine, especially as players go through the ranks and move on to the second team and the first team. There's not a hiccup going on, but at the same time, like, we can still pick up from where they were developing from.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll probably get killed for this. From what I've seen in the past, it just seemed kind of like a puppy mill. When I interviewed for the academy, it was, we want the development of the player. The outcomes are a secondary aspect of that. Of course, you want to win. That's how you get attention. That's how you promote your players. That's how you get talked about. But you have a strength and conditioning background. They have started to increase their standards. It's still just a certification. You can get a kinesiology degree also. But I felt like there were some holes in their thought processes, even just kind of the medical side, and trying to communicate with them on what I was trying to do. We had a pseudo compartment syndrome that we were dealing with on the unilateral leg. I was overseeing that athletic trainer, and I gave her full rein to do what she needed to do. She was not really meeting expectations from my end and being able to answer the questions from her evaluation, and I didn't feel that she was adequately going and secondarily evaluating to get those answers. And so her and the strength and conditioning coach were, they had been working together for a while. They had each other's back. but this was an older age academy player that was looking to swing to the second team and that summer. And it was, okay, compartment syndrome is very sticky because that can either end up in surgery, and usually those don't have very good outcomes with the fasciotomy. And then secondarily, we could never get to surgery and he could just retire because the injury got too out of hand. So if we are trying to make it to the end of the season, and have him perform with his training schedule, yes, there's game day -1, 2, 3, whatever. He's going to need a very individualized program, and we're going to have to cut all the fat that we can because the symptoms that make it worse is activity. So if we want him performing in games, we just need to thin out everything, make sure we're meeting the marks to be periodized for the game, whatever. They did not seem to understand that, and that was very difficult for me to talk them through. And at least, it just didn't seem like they had done their homework on this. So I probably didn't present it in the best way, but I was like, you guys need to put together a presentation on this case, go find the evidence, tell me what you learned from compartment syndrome, and really articulate that you know what's going on. And it just never got to that point. The director got involved. He seemed to kind of back them more, which was, that's on him. He's the head of everything. And then, it just wasn't really getting better. So I was like, well, let's go to the osteopath. Ended up being degeneration of the lumbar spine. But if you actually did a full testing, neurological test, which I was kind of pushing for, we may have come to a better answer. But some of those conversations, the soft skills, putting your ego aside to have a conversation because we're watching out for the athlete. That's why I have come up with the perception of puppy mill. That's not every program, obviously, but it's a lot of kids. Ultimately, they're all under 18, so they are kids that are professional athletes that we are trying to figure out how to give them the foundations to have a longevity of a career. They're signing contracts at 15 with professional teams now. So you better have a product that will survive in that type of atmosphere. So I think going back to standardization with the strength and conditioning coaches, it's interesting that they seem to hold a little bit more power than an athletic trainer sometimes. I don't know if you've seen that at all. I'm not saying that they're not educated. They obviously know what they're doing. I just think the standardization is a little off for them for how much power that they actually hold within a team. And then I know that there's always been friction between athletic trainers and strength and conditioning coaches, which has gotten better over the years. But, is it a lack of those soft skills, those leadership skills? Is it just because they're lacking certain knowledge points? I don't know.
Yeah, no, from my experience, it's always been relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have good relationships, and maybe you can nitpick those with the soft skills, but at the end of the day, it's how you connect with your head coaches, how you connect with the strength conditioning coaches. I going up the ranks from a high school athletic trainer to where I am today, I never, how can I say this in a more professional way, but never kissed ass, So for me, I always worked hard. I always studied. I always gained knowledge. I went up the ranks, got my DAT so I can continue learning, right? So you gain your trust. And I think that's the important thing is how do you continue growing as a professional to get yourself in a situation where you can gain the trust of the coaches and and the rest of the support staff, right? At the same time, you also have to have trust in the other professionals that they're going to do their job and they're going to support you. And it's just that in that relationship, you develop support. I have a great relationship at LAFC with all our performance coaches because they trust what I do and I trust in what they do. And we have an open collaboration. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there some times where there's friction. Yeah, there is, because every professional thinks they're correct in their own area, right? But you kind of hit it perfectly well where it is about the athlete's health and their performance, right? And if you're looking at an academy player, they are an investment to the club. At LAFC,
Mm-hmm.
the kids don't pretty much pay anything to be at the academy. I don't know how it is that was the union, but it is an investment. So if you want to make sure that your investment is good, you rely on all these great minds to manage the athlete in the most best way possible, right? Because you don't want to end up with quote unquote broken products by the time they get to the second team or the first team.
In sports medicine, we talk a lot about recovery, but not all recovery tools are created equal. Mark Pro isn't just another muscle stim unit. It's a recovery technology trusted by elite athletes, athletic trainers, and rehab professionals. Whether you're grinding through tournaments, back-to-back practices, or long clinic days, Mark Pro helps your muscles recover faster, perform better, and feel fresher tomorrow. By improving muscle activation and promoting natural circulation, Mark Pro clears out fatigue and accelerates your body's natural healing without soreness or downtime. Use Mark Pro to stay ahead of fatigue and keep performance consistent, because in sports medicine, recovery is performance. Head to markpro.com and use the code TOTHEBONE for an exclusive listener discount. That's to the bone at markpro.com. Mark Pro, the best in recovery. Raise the bar in 2025. Complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements early. Don't forget that 2025 is a reporting year for athletic trainers. Are you on track to complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements? Find out today by logging into your BOC profile at bocatc.org/BOC360. That's right, it's time, and this year is the year to renew your certification maintenance requirements. Check it out at bocatc.org/BOC360. Hey listeners, ever find yourself on the sidelines needing that one crucial item? Look no further than Nexus Sports Medicine. Nexus is your go-to partner for creating comprehensive medical kits and accessories tailored for athletic trainers in any setting. From high school fields to professional arenas, Nexus has you covered. These kits are designed by an athletic trainer with meticulous organization, ensuring that you're always prepared, no matter the situation. Stay ahead of the game with Nexus Sports Medicine and keep your athletes safe and thriving. Check out Nexus Sports Medicine at nexus-sportsmed.com. That's Nexus, NEXUS-sports, SPORTSMED.com to find out more and get your perfect gear today.
Well, okay, so your DAT at AT Stills, what was your concentration in, or what are the different topics that you guys covered within your program?
So when I went through the program, I spent about 3.5 years doing that.
Okay.
I specialize in the areas of rehabilitation and orthopedics. And the other two areas that you can specialize in was sports neurology, and I think at the time it was called athletic training, education, and leadership.
Okay.
But I believe they just changed that area, or the name of that area, but I can't recall it, so I apologize for that.
AT Stills will be calling you soon, right after this. So I guess, did they try to intermingle some of those different specialties into your concentration so you got a well-rounded education, or how did they do that?
Yeah, so the base of that education was a lot about on just research methods, so learning how to do just different applied research methods in a more clinical setting versus a lab setting that you typically see in like a PhD program. And so you get to learn that stuff. You get to learn how to take data, how to present that data in a more attractive way to your stakeholders, because it's real life scenarios. At the same time, you got your areas where you get to learn more about, as far as in my areas were rehabilitation and orthopedics. So you can take the courses in any kind of way you want, but they do have recommendation on the progression, just because it makes your life a lot easier when it comes to studying those topics.
Well, you had mentioned the leadership concentration. Did you get any of those classes while you were in the program?
I didn't. For me, my professional interest would be more clinical.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I just graduated my DAT. Woo woo.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it was leadership, entrepreneurship, and globalization based. So we did not really do a lot of clinical. We obviously had some research classes, or scholarship is what we called them, just so we knew how to better enrich what we were pushing out with our different concentrations or capstone projects. So with how the education system is going for athletic trainers, obviously masters is where we're at right now. What are your thoughts on specialization within the masters? Or do you think that the doctorate level is where people should be going to get their specializations? Are there any holes through the education? Like, what are your interpretations, since we kind of hit on students and kind of the newly graduates, not a whole lot, but since we're seeing holes on actually the hands-on portion, what would be your optimal education now with how students are going through programs?
I don't think that we should have specializations in master's program just because it is a foundational degree.
Yeah.
It's like anything, right? You could just start a pack first before you get the more specialized bundle packs or whatever you want to call it, right? You gotta learn to drive before you can drive a NASCAR, So that's the way I see it. Athletic training is a generalized profession.
Mm-hmm.
We learn so much from rehab to diagnostics to administrative, right? We have so many tools that we can utilize to be good healthcare professionals. And I think we need to learn how to use all those tools before we decide to specialize in certain areas. I think for me, like I said, I came from a performance background, so for me, the choice of specializing in rehab was probably an easy one. I love movement. I love everything that has to do with rehabilitation. And so I think the athletic trainer, especially coming from the program, needs to figure out what they want to specialize in after getting their hands dirty and getting in the trenches and learn what they want to do for the remainder of their lives, right? Some people may have a calling in teaching. Other people may have a calling in maybe business, and others may want to work in college or high schools, right? And do more mental health stuff, more rehab stuff, right? There's so many avenues you can go into it as an athletic trainer, and I think that's a beautiful thing about athletic training, which is why I believe a master's program should be very foundational and nothing to do with specialization. Teach the basics, what it's like to be an athletic trainer.
Well, I guess so you had a performance background. Let's see, what was my background? I was actually in a pre-athletic training program when I was in my undergrad. And then it turned into a kinesiology, but I basically did a pre-athletic training and a health and fitness management. I think that's what it was called, which all got rolled into kinesiology. I see it that maybe our prereqs have gotten a little soft for the athletic training programs. So we have a lot of students coming in that maybe didn't really have a strong direction before getting into the athletic training program. So they didn't have a whole lot of real world experience. And I feel with a master's, it's an adult program in my mind. And we just seem to have a lot of young souls coming through and really trying to carve their path where maybe they didn't have a lot of experience before getting in the program. So I think that's my interpretation is there's a lot of ambiguity coming out of the masters, where I knew I was going to be somewhat in performance in my undergrad. It was strength and conditioning or athletic training. Kind of got shoved into athletic training with some health conditions I incurred, but I think that I like the master's level personally. I know people will debate that up and down, that was not the right choice, but I don't think that we created a contingency plan with the 4 years between the high school and the master's program. Especially from what I've heard is that a lot of work study athletic training programs are going away, which I think is a really bad idea ultimately. I'm not sure how do you get people's feet wet without any access to water? I've heard that, I don't know if it's Katie specifically, so don't quote me, but I've heard that they're really pushing to get that work-study athletic training program out of the undergrads and are trying to get full master students into those positions, which makes sense, but I don't think we're producing enough master students to be able to fulfill the need. I know it's extra help, but they're getting paid to do it. But that kind of raises another question, is should the master students be paid for that work study position ultimately, since they are actively working to get their certification in that? So it's just become very complex, and we've become very, I don't know if elitist is the right name, the protection of it all. I think we do need to set boundaries, but I don't think that's necessarily the right way, is to push people away from the profession that might be interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things, lots to digest on that topic right there. With the paid masters, you talk about like a student who hasn't been certified and is currently in the program, and so they're going into like I'm assuming like a D1 program.
Well, like
to replace the GA position, or?
Well, they're getting their clinical experience, I guess.
Okay.
So they're actively involved in their education, but getting clinical experience hours. I kind of like the GA position. I think there needs to be some more protections on how they create those job descriptions and how they're compensated. But I think that's another part missing from the masters is, okay, you get shoved out, you're on your own, you're going to go make decisions for the first time as of tomorrow after you graduate, which I think a point that needs to be brought up in the programs with the preceptors of how do you give responsibility to that student that's about to graduate, but also not taking on the full liability somehow. I don't know.
Right.
I think a GA ship is a great step, but there need to be some parameters around that because there's still a fully certified athletic trainer making decisions. But I see that as a certified mentorship at the same time. I just don't think GA ships have gotten a great reputation over the past few years. Just low pay. Some of the responsibilities are a little crazy. I didn't work it, so I'm not sure, but I've just haven't seen great advocacy for protecting those positions from the employment side or from the employee side either.
Yeah, I think athletic training is it's a profession that gets abused.
Mm-hmm.
I think athletic training is a profession that gets abused with a lot of these titles on job positions. You're going to see a lot of athletic training positions out there for certified athletic trainers still call themselves athletic trainer intern positions. There's also some athletic trainer positions out there being call themselves a residency, but it's not a true residency,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't think that I would be very careful in going that route if there is going to be no protection, as you said, for athletic trainers, because a lot of these times these positions can really hide as free, cheap labor.
Yeah.
And now I can understand, let's say, like an intern, a student that is in the master's program, if they were to get paid, I can understand that aspect too, because there are paid internships in the professional world, right? You get paid as an intern as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if the expectation is for an athletic trainer to truly develop as a clinician, then they would need to have more hours on the field to gain those hands-on experiences, to have those conversations, to get that professional responsibility and develop. But at the same time, it's not cheap being a student. Going through the athletic training program, I was getting paid as a soccer coach. I was getting paid to do first aid and so you have to make money somehow because you also have to eat, you also have to drive, you also all that stuff. You have to be a human being, So
Well, that
I
was
would.
in my program. They basically told us right off the bat, like if you're thinking about doing any part-time jobs or anything, you should probably send in your resignation because you're not going to have time to do it. I guess my devil's advocate is I don't like that I feel like it's a double-edged sword paying a student to work. I mean, they are there for the educational aspects of it. And you can't broad stroke it, but I do think that there will be students that are motivated just because they're making money rather than their educational experience that they're paying for. I think it puts in a status quo of mediocrity because, well, I'm getting paid, so I'm just, going to go set up the waters. I'm not really going to insert myself anywhere else because, hey, I'm getting paid. I don't like that we've come to that point in society, but you see it at anywhere. It's not just athletic training that people are just putting in the bare minimum because, why should I put in more if I'm not going to advance monetarily or title-wise? I don't it's just such a complex and fishy situation.
And then let's think about the athletic trainer who has a certified athletic trainer interposition. Mm-hmm. What happens if they're getting paid the same amount as a non-certified athletic trainer? Like, what is that going to do for that dynamic? What does that do for that position?
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, the other side of the debate with the preceptors was, well, should the preceptors get paid? Either side. I still haven't come up with a good answer for that one. But I guess it brings up the point of, well, you're getting free labor to help you, which it shouldn't be looked at that way, but you are getting extra hands to help with your clinic and your operations. So I'm glad that we're fighting for being compensated for our effort, our worth, our value, but it's kind of made other things kind of murky at the same time of we're not all made of money, but how do we get people involved? Because that's kind of the caveat now of trying to do anything or get experience.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a good topic for people to digest because, this is a position that people from the top got to think about how they want to present the position to the public for athletic trainers. At the same time, how our program is going to protect students, at the same time develop them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a big topic for everybody around, everybody who works.
Yeah.
And develop in the athletic trainers.
Yeah. Well, that was my husband's working at FedEx, and I think I've talked about this before. He's basically so good at his job. He's doing 2 routes, so it should be 2 separate people delivering at FedEx in this route, but he's able to do it both and within the time allotted for a normal person to do one of those routes. So he's kind of in that debate of, well, I should get some sort of extra compensation since I'm doing the job of 2 people. And I think that's where athletic training, I think it's gotten difficult because our scope keeps increasing. We're open to those new skills because it makes our job easier and function and getting shit done ultimately. But nobody's actually realized what it takes to get educated in those skills, maintain those skills, and then those responsibilities to manage those skills when you incorporate it into your clinic. So I know usually my classic interpretation of athletic training was emergency response and rehabilitation and game competition prep, practice prep kind of thing. Now our umbrella has expanded to the performance side, nutrition, mental health, mental performance, therapist. I don't
performance scientists.
Yes.
Epidemiologists.
And we also have the leadership portions, the managerial supervision portions, public relations. We do everything and anything. Even in old school, we used to do laundry. We used to do travel coordination, ordering meals. I think some of those things have slowly been taken off our plate, luckily. But we're always getting fit into these other things, but not really acknowledged for how much energy, time, management of those skills really take on. Through my program with the leadership portion, it depends how you define a head athletic trainer. Sometimes it's just you're in charge of a large team. Sometimes it's you're in charge of the whole department. Watching my mom, she works at the hospital in the accounting billing department. She does about 3 separate jobs, but she's so good with her experiences and her knowledge. She slowly has increased her compensation, but at the same time, just the energy to concentrate on your people as a leader and a manager, supervisor, holy cow. And I've noticed that in athletic training too, is as a leader, supervisor, head athletic trainer, just managing relations, not even the day-to-day athletic training things. It takes a lot of energy because those interpersonal relationships, it takes a lot of emotional energy to navigate the emotional intelligence, just the emotions. So when someone's angry, it takes a lot of energy just to keep yourself in check, but also being receptive on listening on what they need, what they're feeling, trying to interpret and listen, fully listen to what they're trying to express to you, dig through the different flags they're throwing. I think athletic trainers do a pretty darn good job, but we could be better if we actually gave a leader in our department the time to actually execute those things, because they're supposed to be fielding stuff in the future, the past, being prepped for the next step the department's taking, and they're in charge of a full sports team on top of that. I think those are some of the things that are holding back our profession, is that we're not giving the person that's supposed to be blazing a path and making our lives easier the time of day to actually do that.
Hey friends, quick break to talk about something that's changing the game in sports medicine: red light therapy. We're talking real science and results. There are over 4,000 research papers showing how light can help with inflammation, pain, tissue healing, swelling, and musculoskeletal conditions. The team at Fringe took that research and created red light therapy tools designed by rehab experts and sports medicine professionals, built to deliver light directly to the tissues that need it most, promoting healing from the inside out. And get this, no wires, no EMF, no flicker, and absolutely no bad vibes. Whether you're running a clinic, working in an athletic training room, or recovering at home, these tools are a game changer for performance and recovery. Check them out at fringeheals.com and get 10% off with the code TOTHEBONE10. That's to the bone 10 for 10% off. You work hard. You train hard. You take care of everyone else. But when was the last time you treated yourself? That's where Source Soap comes in. Created by athletes for athletes, Source Soap is an all-natural recovery soap that helps wash away soreness, inflammation, and fatigue. With ingredients like peppermint, eucalyptus, and activated charcoal, it's basically self-care disguised as a shower. Whether it's after a long training session, a tournament weekend, or just a tough day, Source Soap helps you reset, recover, and smell amazing. Because taking care of your body shouldn't stop when you leave the gym. So go ahead, treat yourself. Head to sourcesoap.com and use the code TTB15. That's TTB15 for 15% off your order. Because recovery starts with you.
Yeah, and going through my DAT program, one of the methods we learn on how to grow our own local setting was through data. So collecting data to make a valid point on your needs, on where you want to take your clinical setting, for the improvement of the athlete healthcare, right? But what do you do? What do you do in that situation where you got to collect data, you got to present it to make a strong case? But at the same time, you are in charge of a high school with 600 to 800 athletes. You got 3 athletes on the table needing rehab. You got a game in about 30 minutes, and then you got another game. You got cross JV varsity, and then by the time you're out there, it's already 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then you got to get back and do it again. In my situation, when I started as a certified athletic trainer, I was a sports med teacher. So I was at the high school at 7 a.m. I taught 5 periods. So I got off at 2 o'clock. I had a half-hour wiggle room to get myself transitioning into now my quote-unquote athletic trainer job. And I had the first patient at 2:30 getting taped because we had a game at 3:15. And then we had a JV game at like 4:30, and then a varsity game at like 6. And then I'm out of there because I'm done with all the prepping. I'm done with all the post-game treatments. I'm out of there by 10 o'clock. And then I got to do that all over again and wake up and be there by 7 in the morning. And so it's really hard to advance in practice when you're also in a situation where you're basically overworked. And so you have to find, we as athletic trainers, we have to be very creative, which we're really good at, but be very creative in a more impactful way versus just sounding like we're just complaining to our administrators about more support. I know there's a couple of athletic trainers that I know where they've shown, how many treatments are they doing in a day, how many patients are coming through the door in a day, and they're collecting that data and presenting it to their administrators to get more support. In my case at LAFC, I basically laid out what my day looks like and what our coverage plan looks like and where we're lacking. And some of the things that we were lacking was just rehabilitation for the athlete, like really good rehab, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't have standards be up here and then your expectations. Not, and the reality of things is so much far lower, So if your employer or administration wants to have a very good, solid program, one, you have to present that in a more impactful way, but two, they have to be open to that information and help support you to make sure you're given everything you need to do to succeed. And that's a tough thing when you're just a clinician and not necessarily so much on the administrative side. So you also have to find ways to delegate those responsibilities and have that open conversation with your support athletic training staff as well, right? Unfortunately, I'm fortunate at LAFC that I have 2 really good athletic trainers who are very open to helping me out, being strong clinicians on the field, understanding that sometimes I have to remove myself from the field and be more in the office to do what I need to do to put ourselves in a successful position.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's with when I was with the academy. I got thrown in. I literally drove from LA, drove into work the same day, and I was there by myself for 2 weeks because the Florida tournament was going on. And luckily I am aware of my surroundings and made it work. But for me to clean up the job responsibilities, my interpretation was it to clean up and get ready for us to transfer to the next stadium. We were with the first team. And, I didn't have an office. I didn't have a desk. I was having to go up into the conference room by myself and do it, or do my work and stuff. So I wasn't even being able to fully integrate with the team, and they weren't really open to me either. They were sticking to their guns together. They weren't really super open. But, I felt bad because I was like, I just need to go home and just be able to work on this continuously. And they thought I was just going home and chilling out. And it was like, I'm working. So I think I've definitely had that interpretation of some leaders that just close their door and they're just trying to get stuff done, but you don't understand how many fires they're putting out, working with the departments, coordinating the next steps for the future of your program. And I think it's just a lack of understanding of what leadership actually is. And obviously everybody can be a leader. It's just how you influence other people or trying to remove barriers for people surrounding you so they can do their job easier. But that's, with being a head athletic trainer or leader, manager, whatever you want to call it, I really don't think that they should be necessarily assigned to a specific team. I think they're there to plug in when someone's sick or, there's a last minute practice, making sure that your team has boundaries and you are there to support them to make sure that they'll return to work and be happy and ready to go and not burnt out, and being able to have conversations within a day of it coming up. I really hated having to wait of no, we'll schedule that for a day or two later. And it's like, well, but this needs attention now, or I need this piece of equipment because this is broken. Can you go figure out how we can pay for it or get someone out to fix it? Or do you have knowledge of fixing it? We're just, I just feel like we're always 2 steps behind because we don't have enough personnel or people in the correct positions to be able to execute a performance medicine department ultimately. So yeah, I've also played with the idea of do we need to segment our departments to our specialties of if somebody's really good at emergent care, maybe they're covering all the games and practices. You have someone really good at rehab or manual therapy. They have their schedule for when athletes come in to be evaluated or start their rehab program and then performance, return to play, whatever. I don't know, somebody that's really good at prepping teams to come in and tape everybody and get them activated. Does that make sense in athletic training, or does that shrink us to an extent of what we can do? There has to be a better way for us to be able to support each other and set boundaries for how many hours we're putting in and all that type of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only thing, that in that scenario for me is just, okay, now you're putting a situation where athletes are very, very specialized in certain things, so they're not necessarily going to be exposed to rehab if you're a emergency person, right? I even heard some ideas being thrown around where you have specific body specializations similar to what physicians have. It's like you're the foot person, you're the shoulder person, and so in athletic training it's like, okay, you can have now, let's say, specializations in certain body parts. So if you're the foot ankle person, you can be the soccer guy.
Yeah.
Or basketball person. If you're a shoulder person, you can be a volleyball or baseball athletic trainer, right? But at the same time, if let's say your goalkeeper gets hurt and it's a shoulder injury, you could possibly refer that internally to a shoulder specific athletic trainer, right?
Yeah.
So I've heard that idea as well, but it doesn't necessarily take away the whole time efficiency, I think for me in my position right now is understanding what strengths our support academy athletic trainers have, and that way I can delegate those tasks to them. One of our athletic trainers, I felt there was a need for patient education, especially when this is not a residency program. So what athletes do outside of the 21 hours of when they're not with us matters when they're with us for the 3 hours. And so for one of our athletic trainers, she wanted to focus more on nutrition. And she's very good at Canvas, so she creates all these patient education flyers and sends them out to parents. Cool. Now we're knocking off one need at the same time. And now we're educating our parents and our athletes about nutrition and what they can do at home. Hence, that leads into the injury prevention bucket, right? Because now they're eating right. Now they know how to make sure what to drink, how much to drink, right? Because there's some times where you ask your athletes, how much water have you drank? Well, I drank enough. Okay, well, that's not a specific number, But now you're having these constructive conversations with your athletes, and it makes your job a lot more easier. So, it's really what you can do, again, about building your foundation to ensure that you're also making your life a lot easier, right? And I feel like that's something that I kind of try to implement into our academy program is, okay, if you're going to request our standards to be high and meet the first team expectations as what they would do, we would also need to have that support and also create that foundation to help us manage this beast, because first team is one team, second team is another team, and then the academy is, in our situation, 6 teams. So you have to create a situation where you can be a positive impact with patient care, at the same time alleviate a lot of the unnecessary stressors for you and your staff.
Yeah. Well, did you guys just transition to a full scholastic academy that you
Not
guys
yet.
are? Okay. So that's what the union had, was they had school academics and then they had academy training. So I think the older teams practiced in the morning and then went to school, and then the younger teams were in the afternoon. Obviously, school is very important, but the one thing that I was trying to do as the head for the academy was implement things of how do you become an athlete? How do we educate you to be an athlete, to be able to advocate for yourself? I mean, I was only there for a short time, so it was really me bringing in the tools and resources to make sure that they were supported. But the next level was, okay, education-wise, mental performance. I mean, a little out of my scope, but how do we get those performance aspects of mentality of an athlete? Because that is the time to give them the foundations of how do you deal with, struggles, conflict, you're not meeting the expectations. How do you healthily do that so that you're not just digging yourself in a hole and you're just an athlete that's really hard to work with, opening yourself up to criticism, feedback, those types of things, which I don't think anybody's really teaching anyone else, even in general schools and stuff. Recovery tactics, like the nutrition stuff of, okay, after practice, what are you doing to make sure that your body is in an optimal state for tomorrow, whatever it may be. The nutrition aspects, I was trying to bring together packets for post-surgical nutrition, working with the first team nutritionist, dietitian, so that we had resources to give athletes. We were having a lot of surgeries at that point. So I think sometimes these academies, no matter the sport, they get so specific with just the talent, the output portion, and they're not looking at the actual foundations of how to make them a good person at the end of the day, is what I kind of see it as. How do you make it a self-sustaining athlete? So, we had just signed someone to Manchester City, and he was 13, and his contract was going to start when it was 15. And it was, okay, but when he leaves us, is he going to have the skills and tools to be able to carry on when he goes to a fully different country, especially at 15, to be able to manage the new environment, the new culture, the new expectations? I don't think we're necessarily doing that at the academy level. And I think the academy is missing a lot of core concepts that could create, more kids going to the Premier League ultimately.
I think that's just, I think, no, it's definitely, I definitely understand that part. And I think that's the problem with just people in general when it comes to healthcare as a scope, right? If I'm a person and I decide to hire a athletic trainer to do a rehab for my low back, all right, cool, now fix me because I'm paying you to fix my low back, right? And so the way I approach it is I tell all my athletes that we have a 50-50% relationship. Like, I do my best in those 50%. At the same time, you have to do your best in that 50% to make sure that you're getting the best care possible. And in that bridge is the education to make sure that they're taking care of themselves how they should be, right? So let's say we got an athlete who just sprained their ankle or maybe just had hamstring strain or whatever injury you can think of. What educational piece are you going to give them to help them improve, let's say, from the inflammatory stage? Are you going to teach them what type of foods they should eat that are anti-inflammatory, right, to make sure that their inflammation is being managed? What type of care? Are you going to tell them to put on some ice? Are you not going to tell them to put on some ice? Are you going to teach them how to compress, let's say, their ankle if they sprained their ankle?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to teach them how to compress with an elastic wrap? So that way they can do it at home and not show up the following day with a blown up ankle. So it's really teaching someone how to take ownership of their health, because like I said, you only have 3 hours with the athlete or the patient themselves.
Yeah.
The other 21 hours, they need to be able to take care of themselves and make sure that they're coming back to you in a successful position, right? So you guys can continue progressing through your rehab phases. So I understand the responsibilities that athletic trainers have to make sure their athletes are being managed in an appropriate way. But at the same time, you have to understand that life happens outside of your domain, and they have to also be responsible enough to put themselves in a successful position, especially if they're going to be a professional athlete. Like, you're not a normal human person. You're not, my 17-year-old athlete who's on the verge of trying to get into a second team contract is completely different from me. We have to eat different. We have to sleep different. Yeah, we both have to perform in an optimal way. Me as an athletic trainer and him as an athlete, but at the same time, like, you're doing a lot more physical things that require just a different approach to how you take care of yourself. And you're going to have to take that with you when you're 25, when you're 30, or when you're 35, or whenever you're close to retiring. You have to take that education to make sure you have a sustaining career. And it goes back to investment. How are you as an athlete going to invest in yourself? And you look at the grand scheme of things, how is the club going to invest in his athlete with the type of professionals they provide, right? Are they just having an athletic trainer just to cover, or are they going to also bring in a nutritionist to help with the nutrition part? Are they going to bring a mental health person to help with the mental piece, right? To make sure that their investments are to the best potential ability by the time they receive them at the first team level.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think the academy is bad in any way. I do think it's developing a different type of athlete because it is very specialized. That was with the union is they'd go to school, they'd go soccer, they'd go home, come back. They were with the same people every single day. And then just even their PE class, which I still don't understand. They did not have that nicely laid out with everything. They just would go play soccer more. So it was like, we have gotten very good technically at different sports from the specializations that we're doing, but I think the robustness, the well-roundedness of an athlete is missing, and just even the different teams that they're playing on, they're not getting that, I guess, cultural diversity of working with different athletes, different situations, different tactics and those types of things. And that's where I get somewhat worried about these young specializations is I don't think they're fully developing their body because they are only soccer 24/7, and they're with the same people for almost 24/7, at least at the academy I was with. Yours is still, I think they might be getting those different inputs, but it's just the adaptability, and that's where I felt it was kind of hard. The kids were amazing, but I think some of the situations that they got put into, maturity level, they may have been a little bit behind just because they were in their circle for probably a good 2/3 of the year and did not experience other things. So those are some of the worries that I have with how the academies are developing and how are they going to address it. And I mean, I thought this school was a little of a joke, but if they're going to be professional athletes, I don't know, like, do we change the standards for what people are trying to accomplish? And I don't know if that's the right answer either sometimes.
Yeah, that's kind of my problems with some of these professional academies too, is we sell on the dream that every athlete can get a pro contract. And while that sounds very attractive, especially when you're in a professional setting, a professional academy setting, and you're right there to try to reach that finish line and where you want to be at.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes not, majority of the time, not all the athletes are going into that professional setting. They're either going to a college level and they're getting a college education. And so it's tough when you think about the situation where you have these residential academies with only a limited amount of people that you're exposed to. And let's say you don't make a professional setting and they got to go out into the real world and deal with college professors, deal with other people, other students, right? How do you deal with the social piece of that? And I feel like a lot of times when I meet with academy athletes, especially when they're young, there is not a lot of social flavor going
All you're
on.
talking about is soccer. You guys go watch the games and then you talk about soccer.
Right, but there's a lot of things in life other than soccer, and
I
I
know
understand.
that.
I love soccer. I love soccer in general, right? But there are a lot of other things going on in the world,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the scary part when you see college athletes or kids going to the college setting and they got to deal with all these people and deal with all these things. Like, what do you do in a relationship now? You're in a relationship and you have a significant other who has a certain personality trait. How do you deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, for me, it's I think there's a social piece that is going to miss, especially as you limit your network as a kid. I feel like we just unlocked more at the end than the beginning.
Well, I know. That's always the problem, is I feel like people stop listening about halfway through and it's like, well, all the good stuff's at the end. Because it all layers on. We have to build it up for you.
We did warn them that our conversations go all over the place in an hour. We talked about students, we talked about our DAT program, life in the academy. Now we're talking about social skills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just in general, athletic training, I think a lot of athletic trainers are having difficulty with social skills with their athletes. So, I don't think it's just the academy level. I think it's just in general, I'm not sure how to pull conversations out of people sometimes anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Let's do it.
Well, thank you so much for being on, and I will have you on in the near future.
All right, Shelby, thank you so much.
That's it for today's episode of To the Bone. I hope we've sparked some new thoughts, challenged your perspectives, or simply reminded you to dig a little deeper. Remember, life isn't just about what's on the surface. Sometimes you've got to cut deeper and get to the bone of what really matters. To the Bone podcast is a product of Daly LLC. It's hosted and produced by Shelby Daly, ATC, and Randy Daly. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present. For more on the show, visit www.tothebonepodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Get involved in the conversation. You can find us at www.tothebonepodcast.com. Drop us topic suggestions or be a potential guest. We're all about connecting with you, our listeners. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded.